Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Just want to say thank everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. This is Sunday Trustee Training, Trust Culture, and definitely appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. This is episode 676, Sunday Trustee Training. Trust culture. Very important episode. Just want to give a big shout out to everybody that's enrolled in trustee training, the people that's persisting through, that's looking to adapt what's truly called a trust culture into their family, into their lifestyle, carry it on for generations to come. So we're going to talk about that here today, and we're going to hop into it. Sunday trustee training, trust culture. Trust culture says, guess what, Trust Christian? We appreciate you, Trust Christian. Own nothing, control everything. Because that's trust culture. That's not Trust Christian, that's trust culture. Sunday Trustee Training says people are consistent in their training. That's what Sunday Trustee Training says. Some people say, oh, Trust Christian, do you still do all the things you did when you first started? We would actually like to say we would do the same or even more now. Why not? Why? Because you're in the daily thick of it. If anything, we have it as a daily measurement to actually study trusteeship. So we know that this is going to be fruitful. We're just here to give out what we have on this glorious day. And we're going to go into it from the trustee perspective. What's trust culture? Trust culture is entrepreneur mindset. It's not employee mindset. It's asset management mentality, not liability, pay for mentality. So we're going to talk about what trust culture looks like because people in trust deal with people in it. That's obvious. They don't want other people to be liabilities. So what is the culture, Trust Christian, in the vault? Well, when we look at it from a Sunday trustee training perspective, we're talking about the people we sit at the table with. Trust culture is being able to be good for your word. See, this is one of those things where we get into the environment now, and now we got to continuously show up even if we make mistakes. And it's just standing on business. It's being able to persist through tough moments, any moment, and showing up. We're going to talk about still sitting at the table. Traditionally, it's family sitting at the table, but not all family members are active in trust. Some family members are active, some family members are not active. They're non-active trustees. The culture, once again, is it a beneficiary culture or is it a trustee culture within trusteeship of your family estate? This is the interesting point when we think about, oh man, Trust Christian, where do I go to get the information? See, we wanted to do an episode about the culture because that's where it starts. It starts from the family first. Then it goes into the community, what people call the village. Right. Trust culture says, how far are you going to get up the scale if you have blockages on you? What are blockages? How far are you supposed to go up the wealth ladder? How do you look at wealth? Wealth is in trust. People say they have a good relationship with it. We're going to find out because actions speak louder than words. Oh, Trust Christian involved. What do you mean? Well, even if you show up, you still got to have something to say. Sunday trustee training, trust culture. What does trust culture look like? Trust Christian Vote. You're sitting at the table with traditionally entrepreneurs. They've turned themselves into investors. They might be in stable relationships. They could be older. You can catch younger people in them. We've had trustees going through our program now. We're in less than 23 for sure. For sure. Trust culture once again is where other trustees want to work together. Sunday trustee training. Trust culture. So what is a trust culture? Trust Christian in the vault? Well, it looks like associating with people say they want to associate with. Investing in the relationships, investing in the environment to be in to get and acquire those relationships. Studying. That's what it looks like. What does it look like, Trust Christian? What does it sound like? Going to the law library and reading over the information you need to read. So when you need to recall it, you can just remember it and use it. Trust culture. You gotta trust culture. The elite families are always going to trust their culture. Their own, for our own families are going to trust our own culture. You have to trust your own culture. Some people say, "Oh, I don't have a culture." We were thinking about this recently in respect to a project that we're working on, and we said, "What makes the culture? How do you start shaping the culture?" Well, you start shaping the culture based off your values. What are your values? What are your top values? Do you isolate those things? And we could even say, coming up with a mission statement is highly critical too. But even when you go into culture, there's definitely sometimes mission statements as well, short one liners addressing the problem in the marketplace. So we're always excited to go over what the trust culture is. Simple as that. What is the trust culture? Well, first starts with the first family. The family says, okay, this is our standard, this is our value, and what will be some of those values? Shows Christian for how's it looking at one word would be like a word consistency. So this is one that we have as many of the states that we walk into, and we implement that in as a new trustee on the board or not otherwise, because consistency is definitely one of those things that elevates the board. Consistency is not just a platitude, it rings through where people understand the importance of it at one point as they go through, not just in their work life, but in their company life as well. Sunday trustee training. The trust culture looks like you take a few words such as that consistency and you pair it with another one and you pair it maybe with a few other ones, but there's a level of describing what you do. We're going to be consistent doing X, Y, and Z. We're going to be consistent at X, Y, and Z. That's the culture. Consistent at X, Y, and Z. Alrighty. Well, we know what is the trust culture. Let's talk about what is not. Can we talk about what is not? Well, it's not trying to operate from a double-minded position, meaning that, oh, I could go work for another family estate instead of putting my family estate first. Definitely going to be very challenging from there on out, for sure. So it's focused on making sure that people are consistent with their meetings. Trustee training, trust culture. Trust culture says you get out to other events with other trustees and you actually connect with other people that are in trust as well. Is it that easy, Trust Christian? Yeah. It just costs about $200-300 a plate, or to go to an event, right? We appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. I always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Christian at trustchristian.com. Once again, that's Christian at trustchristian.com. Sunday Trustee Training, the trust culture. Trust culture is networking. Trust culture is knowing the document through and through. As a senior trustee, you know what's going on. Of course, we could say trustee culture more than anything because that's what this is about. Trustee doing his or her job, focusing on being the best trustee they could be. That's what the trust culture is. The trust culture is where the trustee knows, okay, I got to make a shift into a full-time trustee position. They understand that. They understand that the full-time position is the only route to go. Why is it the only route to go? Because then you're managing the estate. Like, we'll have trustees come through and they'll say, what would they say? Oh, Trust Christian, I got my paperwork done. But then they still don't have a good speech pattern towards business. They haven't fully separated themselves with their body from the actual paperwork. They haven't separated equity from legal. And these are things that you hear. We're not giving legal advice or financial advice. These are things that we hear. And so we're just addressing them once again. Those are things that we hear through consultations and things of that nature. Someone to say, oh, I have a legal title for something, but they're not fully aware of how they've separated the legal from the equity, or if they've separated that and they're not clear on even what surety is and things of that nature. So, once again, just burying their head in the sand instead of taking notes and then coming back, because we would like to think we have the best at the vault. So we would like to challenge that thought. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Feel free to type into the chat where you listening live or listening from the replay at. Feel free to type into the chat where you listen live, listen for the replay at. Sunday Trustee Training, trust culture. Well, some people could say you have a library, you have Black's Law Dictionary, you have. We were even thinking about some subscriptions recently that we know we got to up our game in, because these are magazines we've seen in some wealthy people's houses, and we know, okay, hey, you're wealthy, so we know what time it is. We know that, okay, this might be a good one. So we just take notes. We do have one of the mentors, or actually, it's a link on the internet you can get where they have a bunch of books by billionaires, but just search it out. Okay. The trust culture. The trust culture looks like thinking about business first, not personal. Thinking about making sure that the expense is a business expense, figuring out how to make sure everything's business, not personal. That's what the trust culture is about. Even if you work a job, you're still thinking from that position. You don't even think about it as a job, you just think about it as just working a job. But you don't think about it as like, okay, I can take this as an after. Well, it's just different situations, ladies and gentlemen, different from public and private. There's things that you can do in the public that you're not doing in the private, and there's things that you can do in the private that you cannot do in the public. The Vault, episode 676. The Sunday Trustee Training, trust culture. Why do you have to trust the culture? Because those are the guide rails to the risk that you may or may not take. That's why it's so important to get prepared. We were talking about that the other day, actually, with some trustees. We were like, hey, look, the biggest thing you can do is just get prepared. That's the best thing, and the biggest thing you can do is just get prepared as a trustee. And when we look at trustees, that's the one thing that we ask them is, are you prepared? How are you prepared to take action? How are you prepared to do various different things? Are you prepared? That's something we've been hammering home recently over at the Vault, and even some of the people that we work with just hammering that home. Very important. But we definitely appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening, replay. Once again, feel free to type into the chat where you tune in live or listen to replay from. Always appreciate it. Sunday Trustee Training. Y'all can feel free to type into the chat, hey, Trust Christian, this is what we want to hear. But we can tell y'all for sure. Right now, the market's been hot. A lot of people say, oh, the market has gone up and down. Well, it does that. There's never going to be just an all-time high forever, and there's never going to be an all-time low forever. So we've seen it happen. These things, whether they go on tears or inflation runs again, ladies and gentlemen, we see where these asset classes are going in price and things of that nature. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay, knowing everything that they need to know and doing everything that they need to do. We appreciate you. Sunday Trustee Training, Trust Culture. What's the culture? Is the expectation of wealth management, or is it getting wealthy? See, there's a difference between getting wealthy and wealth management. That's why the culture has to have the right mindset. Does the right mindset have an industrious mindset? Do they have an industrious mindset? Do they have a mentality of industry? Are we going out to do something in enterprise? Trust cultures, enterprisers. We were sitting around. Here we go. We're going to go ahead and give a gym because we got the gym again, but we know. And we were sitting around somewhere in trust culture. They said the top 3 sports for wealthy people: skiing, tennis, and golf. So what are you doing? Oh, I want my son to play or someone to play basketball. Nothing against it, but when you talk about wealth culture sports, we talked to those are, and this is why we really always encourage trustees to look into this book called The Millionaire Mind by Thomas Stanley. Good book. We give a shout out to Thomas Stanley. Good book. It's not something that we sit here and say like, oh, it's going to make you a millionaire, but it's definitely something that gives you an idea of the study and research that's done. Sure, it could be, just it could be anecdotal, but at the end of the day, it's still an opportunity to see a compilation of data set on some things. So, ladies and gentlemen, Sunday Trustee Training, Trust Culture, yes. Magazines you read. That's the part of the trust culture. What magazines are you reading? Travel magazines, business magazines, beverage magazines, watch magazines, car magazines, economic magazines, scientific magazines. Trust culture means we have meetings frequently. We have meetings. We meet frequently. We have, what is it? Actually, board meetings, and we have them for our team or our family. We have them frequently. We have them at least monthly, or we have them quarterly. We have to, and we almost have to do them in person. Why? Because the value is there. The value is in the culture that's built. What is our standard? Our standard is to be present when we're here, correct? So that's our focus, ladies and gentlemen, is to be present when we're here. Sunday Trustee Training with the Trust Culture says, when you're here, you're present. And for that reason, you have the opportunity to be able to make some magic happen, especially when you have great people around you, ladies and gentlemen. The biggest thing is actually recruiting culture. When you're building a culture, you're recruiting and you're looking to find great people that fit your culture. And ladies and gentlemen, you want to find people that not necessarily are different than you or stronger at something that, the same as you at things, but actually, and not just better, but actually different at things in a good way. Sunday Trustee Training. Trust the culture. The culture is going to protect you when you get out in the real world and you need some answers. How do I make money, make money? Oh, really? You want to know how to make money, make money? How long you been doing this now? You think it takes long? No, it takes determination. It takes a plan. It takes some things. It takes a team. It takes some things. Think about, how did somebody get business done at 18 and 19 years old? Oh, because they had a team. It wasn't just because of them having a great idea. It's because they had a team. Even Steve Jobs had a team. Most people have teams. Trustees, you got to have a team. You got to have a team, trustees. Oh man, Trust Christian. I came to Trust Christian the other day. I got the accountant's information. So this is where people short sight it because why? You really want an introduction. We know people. This is how we know people know business. So we're talking to another individual business person said, "Oh yeah, we could just go ahead. You could email and blah blah." They said, "No, it's not. It's not about me being introduced to them. It's about who introduces you." Everybody doesn't want to deal with everybody, as unfortunately in wealth management. Even though it's actually a pretty open culture, we've gone through quite a few people that have made some considerable cash or some slight cash, and they've actually put some time aside. They have a conversation with you for that 30 minutes to an hour, one day of your life. That's the culture. You do business over a meal. You think it was interesting. We talked to a senior again this past week, and we were talking about traveling, going to out of town to connect in a different area. And they say, yeah, you should set up some meetings before you go, and you should have some meals planned out before you go, so you can meet with someone face to face. That's how it looks. That's how it looks, ladies and gentlemen. Sunday trustee training is trust culture. You invest in yourself. The family invests in the individuals to go out and learn and get the education, get the information, to get their relationships. Trust culture is matching work ethic towards the goal. Do you hear that? Matching work ethic towards the goal. If you only knew what that truly meant, we all have to do the gut check of what are we doing for the goal, period. And that's the only thing we can ask. At one point, it comes down to what am I doing right now for that goal, for that objective. And if we could say that we're not doing anything for it, then we know that's why the reciprocal energy may not be or may or may not be there. It's like priming a well, ladies and gentlemen. Building a business, building a trustee situation is like priming a well. You have to pump it for a while before the water comes out. So this is where the mentors used to always tell us, trust Christian, you got to dig your well before you're thirsty. You got to dig your well before you're thirsty. You got to dig your well before you're thirsty. Once again, what's your trust culture in your family estate? Are we taking diary notes or are we playing around with it? People say the market was this. Well, what was your read on the market? I wrote it down. Did you? That day it was different. You felt the energy that day. You can go back and look at that day and jump in that moment and see how energetically it felt again. And that's what it's all about, trust culture. It's about developing the culture. We were talking about talking to someone as well, and they were talking about art. And that's what we're talking about. Trust culture is art. Art holds trust. Most people wouldn't hold $1 million car in their name. They wouldn't hold $1 million piece of art in their name. They're gonna put it inside of something. Sunday trustee training. The trust culture. Making it a point to be available for the family estate when need be, or for your position. Taking on a position, volunteering for that position. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just gonna let y'all know. Trusts aren't built to get rich. People think they get into trust to get rich. I'm going to get in the trust to get wealthy. No. You get in trust to perpetuate your wealth from one generation to at least 3 to 4 to 5 generations out. That's the sentiment we hear on the street and beyond. That's not an easy feat for some. Many won't do it. But what we will say is it is doable, very doable. It takes consistency. It takes having the meetings. It takes putting yourself on a plan. It takes developing an objective and working towards that objective relentlessly. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. Christian at TrustChristian.com. Once again, that's Christian at TrustChristian.com. Sunday Trustee Training, the trust culture. We walk alike. We talk alike. We don't own the clothes on our back. We don't need name brands on our back. That's the difference. Stealth wealth. Appreciate you all for tuning in live, listen, replay. Christian at TrustChristian.com for a consultation. We got trustees enrolled. We're actually going to be on a roll here soon, and we actually have some workshops coming up. So looking forward to relaying some new information and life-changing information. Appreciate the awesome audience that we've had for over 5 years now. It's been over 5 years, and we just appreciate all the listeners for over the 5 years. And I just want to say that, it's been great, and we're just going to go ahead and say it's been some, transitions that we got to make. We want to thank everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay, and thank you all. And, when we get the more episodes, we would love to share. But as of right now, definitely love the vault, the culture that we built at the vault, which is, trustees looking to find some resources. And in turn, they find that there's other people. There we go. Appreciate you all for tuning in live, listening to replay. Christian at TrustChristian.com. Christian at TrustChristian.com. Peace and joy.